Incredible moment, Millionaire CEO reveals life-changing help for rejected single mom and her babies. Sarah Thompson stood at the threshold of the community center, heart pounding in her chest. From the outside, it looked like any other building in their modest suburb, a paint-chipped facade and a flickering sign. But tonight, it held the potential to change everything. A millionaire CEO had come to speak, and Sarah, once a passionate teacher, found herself holding onto a thread of hope. The town's whispers about her struggles filled her ears, yet she needed to drown them out for the sake of her two little ones. Today could be the day she breaks free. Inside, the room was buzzing with chatter. Rows of folding chairs filled with familiar faces turned to her, expressions ranging from pity to judgment. Sarah could feel the weight of their disdain. She swallowed hard, reminding herself that tonight wasn't about appearances. It was about her children and their future. As the workshop began, Mark Thornton took to the stage, charisma radiating off him like a beacon. His rags to riches story resonated deeply, igniting flames of determination in her heart. Every word he spoke felt like a lifeline, as he detailed his rise from poverty and the hurdles he faced. She smiled softly, tears pricking her eyes. He was just like her, once lost and struggling, yet here he stood, a beacon of hope. When he encouraged the attendees to share their dreams, Sarah felt the fear tighten in her chest. Yet, compelled by the kind eyes of her children, who were watching from the front row, she raised her hand, willingness mingling with vulnerability. "I once loved teaching, inspiring others," she said, voice small but steady. "Now, I'm just a welfare mom trying to rebuild." There was a pause. The crowd shifted, a murmur of judgment rippling through the room. But Mark stepped forward, eyes meeting hers with an understanding that pierced through the tension. He shared his own setbacks, his own moments of being judged by a community that didn't understand. Suddenly, the air felt lighter. "You're not alone, Sarah," he said with a fierce conviction. "We can work on this together. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As the days rolled on, the light that had sparked in the workshop grew into a flicker of ambition. With Mark's mentorship, she began designing a small business plan, something that could uplift her family and talk back to the town's unsaid judgments. But just as she felt momentum building, a scandal in their community erupted, fueled by whispers she couldn't escape. Her little triumphs became fodder for gossip, each rumor underscoring a stinging doubt. Could she rise above it, or would the past's chains pull her back down? With Mark at her side, she felt a spark of resistance. She realized she had a voice and the power to challenge the biases surrounding her. Community discussions began to form around her journey, igniting conversations about acceptance and second chances. Standing at the cusp of change, Sarah faced the weight of a defining moment. Would she embrace the potential to reshape her life and community, or would she shrink beneath their judgment? The clock was ticking, and her heart raced. Only time would tell. The days turned into weeks, and Sarah felt the stirrings of determination within her. With Mark's support, she crafted her business plan late into the evenings, fueled by whispered encouragement and the laughter of her children playing in the background. Each line she wrote felt like a step toward reclaiming not just her life, but a sense of worth that had long been buried under the weight of judgment and rejection. Yet, despite her progress, shadows loomed around her. The whispers in the community grew louder, and Sarah found it hard to escape the biting comments that skewered her newfound confidence. "How could she think she's better than us? She'd over here," the words sticking with her like a burr. Doubts crept into her mind, gnawing at her resolve. What if they were right? What if she was just chasing a dream that would end in failure? One Thursday evening, as tensions rose among the townsfolk about her potential business, Mark suggested they host a community meeting. "Let's bring everyone together," he said, eyes sparkling with his trademark enthusiasm. Make them see you really see you. But the thought of facing the crowd made her stomach twist. There was no guarantee anyone would welcome her. Sarah spent the next few days torn between fear and a flicker of hope. Her children noticed the change in her energy, sensing her apprehension. "Mommy, are you going to be okay?" her youngest asked, wide-eyed and innocent, clinging to her leg. That question weighed heavily on her heart. She had to be okay not just for herself, but for them. The day of the meeting arrived, and Sarah stood outside the community center, her breath coming in uneven gasps. A crowd had assembled. They looked at her as if she were a circus act, their stares an odd mix of curiosity and skepticism. With her children at her side, she pushed through the door, heart racing in tandem with the rhythm of her thoughts. The room filled with the hum of voices, but as Sarah walked to the front, the noise faded into an expectant silence. Dawson, one of the more vocal critics, stood in the back with his arms crossed. She could feel his eyes boring into her, ready to pounce on any misstep. But she took a breath, remembering Mark's words, feeling the weight of her journey and all it represented. "Thank you for coming," she started, her voice shaking but resolute. "I know many of you have questions about my plans. But before you judge, I want to share who I am beyond the labels you've given me." As she spoke, she revealed her past, the joys of teaching, the pain of loss, the daily struggles as a single mom. Gradually, the atmosphere shifted. She watched faces transform from skeptical to contemplative. Dawson's stance began to soften, even as she felt the edges of her own vulnerability expose themselves, but just as she began to feel the energy warm towards her, a harsh voice broke through, a reminder of the walls still looming large. "What makes you think you can succeed when so many before you have failed?" The challenge echoed through the room, and a knot formed in Sarah's stomach that it was a moment suspended in time. Would she let their doubts hold her down, or would she rise, fueled by the very fires of judgment meant to extinguish her? With her heart pounding, she reclaimed her voice. "Because I have two incredible reasons to fight," she declared, gesturing towards her children. "They deserve a life filled with hope, not fear. Together, we can change the narrative." Would her words resonate, or would they fizzle out in the face of years of prejudice? In that moment, with everything on the line, she felt the tremors of possibility dancing in the air. But as Sarah awaited the crowd's response, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change one way or another. A heavy silence lingered in the room, thick with tension. Sarah's heart raced in her chest, her face warmed with the hope of acceptance. The crowd seemed frozen, anticipation etched on every face, and for a heartbeat, she thought maybe she had struck a chord. Then, one by one, the murmurs began. Some nodded, voices of support beginning to bubble beneath the surface. "She's right," a woman spoke up. "I've seen her try. She's never given up." But just as quickly, doubt crashed back, drowning the voices of encouragement. Dawson broke through again, his voice dripping with skepticism. "But dreams don't pay the bills, Sarah. You need more than wishful thinking." That hit hard. The faces around her shifted, uncertainty taking root. Sarah felt her stomach drop but clenched her fists, feeling the support of her children beside her, their bright eyes reflecting both worry and love. She couldn't let Dawson take away the embers of possibility. "It's true, dreams alone won't pay the bills," she replied, her voice stronger now. "But passion, hard work, and community can. And it starts with believing in ourselves." For a brief moment, she glanced at the faces in the crowd, and a few were nodding again, their expressions softening. She took a step closer to the audience as if to bridge the invisible divide. "I'm not asking you to believe in me because I'm perfect. I'm asking you to believe in me because I've faced my scars, and through them, I've learned to rise." "Rise?" Dawson scoffed. "What if you fail?" The question hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. Underneath her confidence, Sarah felt the pang of vulnerability. What if he was right? The fear of failure was like a monster lurking just behind her shoulder. But she cast it away. This was her moment, after all, and too much was at stake for her to retreat now. Failure is part of growth, she pushed back gently. I've failed before, and I will fail again. But I will also learn. That's my promise. A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Dawson's challenge had not extinguished her, but rather ignited a fire in those who were willing to listen. Then a voice shot up from the back, I lost my job last year. I've been struggling too. Maybe we should support each other instead of tearing each other down. We're all just trying to survive. Her heart soared at that sentiment, feeling the shift in energy like a wave. The whispers transformed into conversations, hope igniting in patches across the room. Sarah seized the moment, we can build something together. It doesn't have to be just my dream, we can make this community stronger. With those words, someone from the middle of the crowd stepped forward, I know a little something about running a small business. Count me in. Cheers erupted, and the hesitant faces began to swap hesitant glances full of cautious excitement. Sarah felt her heart lift. She wasn't just fighting for her dreams anymore, she was tapping into a collective spirit, a sense of unity. But just as the tide seemed to turn, Dawson's voice sliced through the noise once more. So what now? Are we supposed to just forget everything we've said? That threw Sarah off balance. But she realized that this meeting wasn't about silencing the doubts, it was about transforming them into an opportunity for dialogue. No, not forget. Acknowledge and learn. Let us talk about our struggles, our fears, and then see how we can lift each other up. The room buzzed, conversations swirling like leaves caught in a breeze. Sarah looked out at the community, the faces no longer hostile but curious, hungry for connection, for understanding. Yet in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered, was it truly enough? And what if Dawson wasn't the only one holding back? With that thought lingering in the air, things were shifting, but the path ahead felt fraught with uncertainty. As Sarah faced the crowd, she sensed this was just the beginning of something vital, something that could take her down paths she had not yet dared to imagine. How would they respond to the openness she had just offered? Would it bind them together, or crack the fragile alliance even further? Her heart pounded at the prospect of what lay ahead. The murmur of the crowd mixed with Sarah's racing thoughts. She felt a tremor of fear as she stood in the eye of a storm brewing all around her. Would they embrace her vision, or would Dawson's defiance crush what little hope had been ignited? A middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair stepped forward, a determined gleam in his eye. You're right, Sarah, he said, voice booming with authority. I've been down on my luck too. But I've seen the strength in this community. Together, we can make something real happen. His words sparked a ripple of agreement. One after another, people began sharing their own dreams, their own struggles. A young girl spoke of wanting to start a neighborhood garden, while an older woman mentioned a bookkeeping service she had always wanted to launch. The air filled with an energy that felt electric. As the voices blended together, Sarah's heart swelled. She could feel the weight of their uncertainty lessen slightly. Together, they were creating a support system that she had only dreamed of. But then Dawson stepped forward again, his brow furrowed. Hold on. What's the plan here? Just shouting our dreams isn't enough. You need a strategy. Then let us build that strategy together. Sarah exclaimed, pushing herself to the front. Let us figure out how we can create a small business network. We can host workshops, share resources, and support one another. A wave of enthusiasm surged through the crowd. They nodded, exchanging excited glances. The camaraderie growing among them seemed almost palpable. But still, a shadow loomed. Dawson wasn't done yet. What if you're just leading us into a bigger failure? He challenged, crossing his arms. You may not be the only one dreaming, but what if you burn us all with your wishful thinking? Tension settled heavily on Sarah's shoulders. Logan, her teenage son, stepped closer to her, a protective simmer in his eyes. Mom's right. If we don't take the first step, we'll never know what's possible. We can't just sit here and complain anymore, he declared, his voice cracking slightly but tinged with resolve. The crowd cheered again, but Dawson remained an immovable object, his skepticism palpable. What is going to change? How can you be sure this won't fizzle out like so many town hall meetings before? Feeling doubt creep in once again, Sarah's mind raced. Where was the line between hope and despair? Suddenly, she remembered the morning coffee at their kitchen table, the laughter, the plans drawn on napkins, all the dreams she had shared with her children. She realized that her struggle was not just for herself, but also for every single person in that room who felt just as lost. Change starts small, Dawson, she replied firmly. We take one step together and we build from there. Who else with me? The noise rose, an avalanche of support. One voice shouted, I'll help with social media. Another called out, I can organize our first meeting. An energy shifted, buzzing like the hum of summer cicadas. The atmosphere transformed from hostility to shared purpose, and as laughter erupted, Sarah's heart echoed the sound filled with hope, with possibility. As voices merged into a chorus of determination, Sarah caught a glimpse of Dawson's uncertainty. Perhaps he saw something in the crowd that was different from what he had anticipated. Maybe, he hesitated, a flicker of doubt softening his features. But before he could articulate that thought, Sarah sensed the moment hanging in the air, crackling like static, teetering on the cusp of something transformative. Then, a young woman in the front row raised her hand, her voice piercing through the chatter. But what if things don't go the way we plan? What do we do then? Her question hung like a weight, bringing the chatter to a sudden halt. Sarah's gaze swept across the expectant faces. What would she say? Would this be an opportunity to sow seeds of hard truth or an opening to strengthen their resolve? In the silence that followed, a small voice spoke again, a truth that could alter everything. Would this new sense of unity shatter under the pressure of her answer, or could it solidify their connection? The stakes suddenly felt higher than ever. The crowd held its breath, and in that silence, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility resting squarely on her shoulders. Every question, every fear, could either break them apart or weave them closer together. She knew this was a turning point. The way she answered could either evoke doubt or spark the flames of determination. Things might not work out perfectly, she began carefully, her voice steady. But that's part of the journey. We learn. We adapt. We lean on each other when the road gets rough. A murmur of understanding rippled through the group. Just as Sarah started to feel a glimmer of confidence rebuild, Dawson's eyes darkened once more. He stepped forward, intent to disrupt the fragile hope connecting them. That's too vague, Sarah. We need a concrete plan. A backup. You can't lead a ship without navigation lights, he insisted, arms still crossed defensively. True, Sarah replied, feeling the tension rise again. But a ship can't sail if it never leaves the harbor. What matters is that we try. Doesn't everyone here believe in the strength of community? Nods began to ripple across the crowd, bolstered by her unyielding hope. Logan exchanged glances with his mother, silently urging her not to back down. I believe, chimed the middle-aged man from earlier, who had sparked the discussion. A seamstress can't mend without needle and thread. A few chuckles spread through the audience, lightening the atmosphere. I want to try, a voice piped from the back. Sarah squinted, making out a teenage girl with bright blue hair and a tattered notebook. What if we set small goals? Like a market day. People could sell what they make. We could promote it together. Yes. Someone else added, their enthusiasm infectious. What if we all brought one neighbor along? Or paired up and brainstormed ideas? Sarah could feel the momentum shifting again, like a tide coming in. Dawson's brow furrowed as voices joined in a harmonic crescendo of excitement. But that takes time and effort, he challenged, his voice a low rumble. Yes, it does, Sarah said, meeting his gaze firmly. But isn't it worth it? Doesn't everyone deserve a chance to thrive? With that, she allowed herself to imagine the future, woven not from words but from the collective dreams of every person in that room. Dawson opened his mouth, prepared to counter, but he hesitated, looking unconvinced. For the first time, doubt crept into his steadiness. The young woman interjected again, "And what if we fail?" Leaning against a nearby pole, Sarah took a deep breath. "Then we'll pick ourselves up. Together. How many times have we tried something new? Isn't that part of being human?" Suddenly, the fire in her chest ignited, filling her with an unwavering resolve. Every fall brings a lesson, and every lesson brings growth. We're not going to let fear stop us. Who are we as a community if we don't take risks? Cries of agreement echoed around her. For once, Dawson said nothing. The silence felt heavy, but Sarah finally sensed it shifting. One by one, people began stepping forward, chatting, brainstorming, and providing one another with encouragement and support. The energy built to a peak as laughter and chatter filled the air like a melody. However, a flicker of concern clouded Sarah's thoughts. Yes, they were building something beautiful, but would it be enough to withstand the challenges that awaited them? As she glanced at her son, she couldn't help but wonder, would this fragile dream they were constructing shatter when real obstacles hit? Or would it stand firm, anchored by the very spirits that made them who they were? The future loomed ahead, uncertain yet full of promise, and in that moment, Sarah knew the hardest part was yet to come. Sarah watched as the energy in the room began to swell and break the walls of doubt that had once surrounded them. The laughter and chatter echoed in her ears, uplifting her spirits. Yet, her heart still thudded with a whisper of worry. Would this enthusiasm fade? Would the dream they were weaving withstand the storms of reality? Logan nudged her side, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Did you see that? They're really into it. They believe in it." She smiled, her heart swelling with pride in him and the people around them. But in the shadow of that pride lurked fear. Could this moment of unity withstand challenges? What if Dawson was right? What if they needed more than hope? "Okay, everyone." Sarah called out, her voice rising above the chatter. "Let's try to keep this momentum going." She felt a thrill at their response, their attention locked onto her. "Let's brainstorm together. What kind of things could we create for this market day? What can we share?" The crowd buzzed with ideas. A man suggested home-baked goods. Someone else mentioned handmade jewelry. The teenager with the blue hair had a vision for a community garden. Each idea was more vibrant than the last. As the group collaborated, Sarah stole a glance at Dawson. He stood with his arms still crossed, but even he appeared less rigid, his brow no longer furrowed in disagreement. Maybe this was the moment he would finally see the potential for hope, but before long, that promise faltered again when Dawson cleared his throat. "Look, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but we need to consider our limitations," he cautioned, shaking his head slightly. "Planning a market day is great, but what do we do if no one shows up? Or if it fails?" A hush spread through the crowd, the flicker of hope dimming. Sarah took a breath, feeling that same weight pressing down on her. "But isn't possibility born from risk?" She countered, her voice stronger than before. "If we do nothing, we guarantee failure. We owe it to ourselves to give this a shot. Sometimes it's not about how things turn out but about having the guts to try." Some in the crowd began to nod, and she could feel the tide shifting again. Then, unexpectedly, Logan shouted, "I'll make posters. We can hang them up around town." Excitement rippled through the audience once again, bringing smiles back to the faces that had briefly clouded over. "Yes. And I can make cookies for the event," shouted the man with the baking idea. Suddenly, everyone was talking at once, crafting plans and commitments, tossing around ideas like seeds of hope that had suddenly sprouted. Yet, as the plans took root, Sarah couldn't shake the unease tightening in her chest. What if Dawson was right? Was she too optimistic? As they continued around the room, exchanging fiery encouragement and possibilities. Sarah's heart swelled with the sense of community building around her. These were the people she had wanted to bring together, to show them that even without guarantees, strength thrived in unity. But just then, the doors to the community center swung open, and in walked someone unexpected: the mayor. A hush swept over the crowd. Sarah's heart raced. Why was he here? Did he bring good news? Or was he here to remind them of all the hurdles they would face? The room held its breath, and as Sarah looked at the mayor, she realized that the very future of their dreams hinged on what he would say next. The mayor stepped further into the room, his presence commanding everyone's attention. He wore a crisp suit that shimmered under the community center's lights, his hair neatly combed. But behind the polished exterior, Sarah could see a flicker of uncertainty flash across his face. Those brief moments felt like an eternity. "Hello, everyone," the mayor said, his voice steady but lower than expected. "I've heard a lot of chatter about this market day you're planning." He paused to survey the now eagerly awaiting crowd. "Let me tell you, community events like this are a fantastic way to bring people together," he continued, a hint of enthusiasm creeping into his tone. However, his gaze landed heavily on Dawson for just a moment, then back to the group. "We need to consider parking, permits, and other logistics. It's great to dream big, but without a solid plan, it can quickly spiral out of control." Sarah felt her heart sink a little further. Dawson had voiced those same concerns, hadn't he? She took in the eyes of her neighbors, watching their faces fall, hope dimming just as swiftly as it had brightened. The chatter quieted to a whisper. "But," the mayor interjected, his voice lifting slightly, "I want to support your efforts. I'm not here to kill your dreams." Sarah's heart beat faster. Was he actually going to help them? He continued, "I'll waive some of the permit fees for community events this year to encourage local engagement." His smile felt warmer now, less restrained. "I believe in what you're trying to do, and I'd love to see the community come together like that." A wave of relief washed over the crowd. Soft murmurs of agreement filled the air. Sarah felt a flush of determination surge within her. They still faced challenges, but perhaps they had an ally in the mayor. "Would you be willing to work with us to outline a plan?" she asked, feeling the weight of the moment. "We want to make this event something special but need guidance." "I'd be happy to assist," he replied, nodding graciously. "We can set up a meeting next week to brainstorm logistics and find volunteers. This town deserves to celebrate together." Logan bounced on his heels, a grin plastered on his face. "See? It's happening. We're really doing it." The energy in the room began to swell again. People whispered excitedly, sharing ideas and notes, eager to move forward with purpose. But even as Sarah felt a newfound surge of hope, she couldn't shake the worry lingering in her gut. What if they couldn't pull it all together in time? What if the obstacles turned out to be too great? What if they let everyone down? Just then, Dawson stepped forward, breaking the momentary wave of enthusiasm. "We appreciate your support, Mayor, but we can't just leap without looking at all angles. We need to put together a realistic timeline and goals, and we need more than just volunteers. We need resources." As Sarah turned to him, a mix of anger and disbelief washed over her. "What are you getting at, Dawson? Can't we just celebrate this win for a minute?" "Sarah, we must face reality," he insisted, a crease forming on his brow. "Reality?" she spat back. "This is reality, the people wanting to make a difference." The room fell silent again, the tension palpable. They weren't looking for a fight, they wanted unity. But as the contest of wills unfolded, Sarah realized it was a fragile dance. The future of the project hung in the balance. "Maybe we should take a vote," someone called from the back, trying to ease the rising tension. "A yes or no to proceed?" "Yeah. Let us vote." Another cheered, and the crowd rallied behind the idea. With hope battling doubt in her heart, Sarah wondered, would the group unite behind the dream, Or had Dawson's words sown enough seeds of doubt to derail their plans? The moment of truth was coming, and she could feel her heart pounding as they prepared to cast their votes. The murmurs in the room swirled like a storm, tension thick in the air. Dawson stood firm, arms crossed, buttressing his stance. Sarah's heart raced as her mind flooded with possibilities. How could they let fear choke the joy and excitement that had just begun to bloom? "Okay, everyone," Sarah called out, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "Let's take a moment to breathe. We're all in this together, right?" She scanned the faces, hoping to ignite a flicker of unity, hoping for the kind of fire that propelled dreams forward. With hands raised and voices carrying the weight of their hopes, the crowd fell silent. There was a sense of belonging, a pulse of collective aspiration. Sarah felt it alive and tangible. A wave of encouragement swelled from the back of the room as Logan shouted, "We can do this. Let's vote, not just on the idea but on the spirit behind it." Came a voice from the side. "This is not just about permits or plans. It's about us." The passion in the speaker's words lit a spark of determination in the crowd. "Who's with us? Let's show Dawson that we're ready." Someone chimed in, and agreement rippled like a current through the room. Sarah's heart swelled as hands lifted in affirmation. She felt a rush of hope. Maybe they could turn this around. Perhaps the very friction Dawson created could be the push they needed toward the greater goal. Her own hand shot up, and she cheered, "For our community. For our dreams." Dawson's brow furrowed, but Sarah could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He opened his mouth, likely to object, but the crowd wasn't waiting for him anymore. There was momentum, a whirlwind of voices chanting for a future that belonged to everyone. The corners of Sarah's lips lifted in a smile, a testament to resilience. "Let's count the hands," someone said, quickly organizing the eager crowd into a semicircle. Sarah felt exhilarated watching them rally together, each person a thread in the vibrant tapestry they were weaving. The votes flew up, 2 hands here, 4 hands there. Sarah counted fervently, heart pounding, excitement building. Every hand raised felt like an affirmation of her belief. When the counting was done, it was no longer a question of unity, it was a proclamation. Overwhelmingly in favor. Someone shouted, and a cheer erupted. Just then, the mayor raised his hand to quiet the jubilation. "Congratulations. This is a remarkable start. But remember, enthusiasm alone won't build a market. You need a solid plan." Sarah turned to Dawson, her chest tightening. If anyone could siphon the hope into a constructed outcome, it was him. "Dawson," she said, "maybe you can help us find that plan. While we keep fighting for this dream." He hesitated, the lines on his face softening. "I'll consider it," he said, though doubt still glinted in his eyes. "Then it's settled," Sarah exclaimed, feeling the weight of the moment. "We'll combine our voices and our skills. Together, we'll make this happen." But deep within, an inkling of worry crept back in, whispering doubts. What if Dawson didn't come on board? What if real-life demands crushed their optimism? What if the celebration they dreamed of never actualized? As the excitement faded to a hum of determination, Sarah resolved that she wouldn't let fear stop this. The wind-whipped possibilities sprawled before her, but she felt a flicker deep inside, a premonition of challenges yet to come. "Now we need to get to work," she said, drawing the group closer. "Let's meet next week to get the ball rolling. Dawson, you'll join us, right?" But before he could answer, a new voice rose above the murmur. A stranger stood at the doorway, eyes intense, as if they were carrying a heavy burden that might alter everything. "Excuse me." Sarah felt a jolt run through her. What was this new presence? What change could this person bring? The air thickened with anticipation. The next answer could be a twist of fate. The stranger stepped into the room, and the chatter hushed. A spotlight seemed to fall on her, illuminating the tension that hung thick in the air. She was tall, with windswept hair and a demeanor that commanded attention. Sarah could feel the collective shift in energy, like a tide pulling everyone toward the unknown. "Sorry to interrupt," the woman spoke, her voice smooth yet urgent. "My name is Mia, and I've been listening to your discussion. I couldn't help but overhear that you're working on something truly special for this community." Sarah's heart raced. She fought to hold on to the momentum they had built but felt a sense of unease as Mia continued. "I'm here because I want to help," Mia declared, her gaze piercing through the crowd, searching for connection. "I've seen many projects like yours struggle to take off. But I believe that with proper guidance and some resources, you can create something that will change lives." Dawson shifted, his arms uncrossing slightly, curiosity prickling his furrowed brow. He, too, recognized the gravity in Mia's words. The crowd began to murmur again, excitement building once more, but Sarah remained cautious. "What do you mean by help?" she asked, her voice steadier than her heart felt. Mia stepped closer, as if drawing the group in. "I run a community investment initiative aimed at supporting grassroots movements like yours. We provide funding, mentorship, and the strategic planning you mentioned. What you have here is a great idea, but it needs a solid framework. We can be that framework." The room exploded with chatter, enthusiasm bubbling to the surface again. Sarah felt a wave of mixed emotions wash over her. On one hand, this was the opportunity they had hoped for, but on the other, she wondered what strings might be attached. "And why would you invest in us?" she queried, keeping her tone careful. "Because I believe in people," Mia replied, her eyes narrowing slightly but still holding warmth. "And I see potential in you all. I've been in positions where others didn't believe in me. I know what it takes to rise up and inspire others." A ripple of hope swept through the crowd. Dawson stepped forward, his expression evolving from skepticism to intrigue. "It sounds too good to be true," he said, but his tone was softer now, almost inviting discussion rather than dismissal. "What's the catch?" someone asked from the back, embodying the caution that Sarah felt in her gut. Mia chuckled gently, shaking her head. "There's no catch, but we will need to work together. You need a solid plan, and I can help you develop one. Just know that commitment and hard work play essential roles." At the word commitment, Sarah felt her heart flutter nervously. Could they follow through? Could they trust this mysterious woman with their dreams? The thought of such a partnership both invigorated and terrified her. "Why don't you come back next week?" Dawson suggested, a rare flicker of excitement crossing his face. "Let's talk details, see if this is the right fit for everyone." Mia nodded, a confident smile stretching across her lips. "I'd love that. Everyone deserves a chance to prove their worth." With that, she turned to leave, but before crossing the threshold, she paused. "Just remember, this is a chance for you to change not just your own lives, but those of everyone in your community." As she disappeared out of the doorway, the room buzzed with possibility. Yet, for Sarah, that little voice of worry remained. What if they weren't ready for this? What if the level of commitment required pushed them away instead of pulling them together? Next week, Sarah whispered to herself, feeling the weight of what lay ahead, "We'll decide if this is the path we want to take." But deep down, a stark realization settled in. An uncertain future loomed ahead, challenging her optimism. Would they embrace this opportunity, or would fear push them back into the shadows? And as her mind raced, she couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest decisions were yet to come. The days unfolded like pages from a book, and the community buzzed with anticipation leading up to the next meeting. Sarah felt the weight of those expectations resting squarely on her shoulders. Each night she lay awake, thoughts swirling in her mind. What if Mia's offer was a lifeline? What if it was merely a mirage? Her children's excited chatter filled the house, punctuating her worries with innocence and hope. The day of the meeting finally arrived. Sarah stood before a room full of familiar faces, each infused with a mix of hope, skepticism, and dread. Dawson was there, still skeptical but less rigid. Every eye in the room was pinned on her as she took a deep breath, knowing this was her moment to shine. "Thank you all for gathering today," she started, her voice steady yet filled with the residue of nervous excitement. "Today, we have an opportunity to create not just individual dreams, but a shared future for our entire community." The murmurs of acknowledgement spread through the crowd, igniting a flicker of enthusiasm. She could feel it, an energy building in the room as if everyone was subconsciously uniting for a common purpose. Mia strode in as she spoke, bringing with her an aura of confidence. There was something reassuring in the way she carried herself, as if she'd battle any storm that threatened their dreams. "Thank you for having me back," she said, her eyes sparkling. "I've been looking forward to discussing how we can bring your ideas for the market day to life." Sarah felt the crowd's collective breaths hitch as Mia laid out a simple yet sturdy framework, a blueprint of what their community could achieve together. Call to action, timelines, and roles began to emerge, transforming hope into a tangible plan. One step at a time, it felt like they were walking into the light, but Dawson stood, arms crossed again. "This is great, but how can we ensure it won't fizzle out like before? We need commitment, not just enthusiasm," he added, his challenge echoed by nods of agreement from others. Who would rise to the occasion? Who would put doubt aside to embrace the next chapter? It was the feedback loop of their dynamics, and though tense, it felt like the necessary tension of every progress story ever written. "Dawson," Sarah replied, a new fire lighting her eyes. "Every journey has its doubts. This isn't about predicting failures, it's about embracing them and learning. I'm ready to commit, and I'll need every one of you by my side." Murmurs of agreement rose again, stitched together by shared camaraderie that saw them through struggle. Each moment felt precious as hands began raising. Volunteers offered to help with marketing, logistics, and even securing the space they would need. Excitement thrummed in the air, like a vibrant pulse. Before long, Dawson's stance softened further. "All right," he said, unclenching his arms. "You have my support. I'll help with the planning. But we need to set measurable goals." The crowd erupted into cheers, and Sarah's heart soared. This wasn't just her fight anymore, this was theirs. They had transformed doubt into determination, and Sarah could feel the lines of her own fate intertwining with those of her neighbors. It was a tapestry crafted from shared belief. Weeks passed, and as the market day dawned bright and sunny, the town brimmed with excitement. Colorful banners hung overhead, laughter bounced off walls, and the smell of fresh cookies wafted through the air. Sarah's heart swelled with a mix of pride and disbelief. What had started as whispers of doubt and judgment had evolved into a celebration of community spirit. As families shuffled through the rows of handmade goods and baked treats, Sarah gazed at her children, their eyes wide with wonder. "Look at all these people!" her daughter exclaimed, taking in the sights and sounds. "Mommy, we did this." "You did this," Sarah replied, a radiant smile across her face. "You helped create this." In that moment, everything surrounding her felt perfect, a culmination of love, strength, and possibility. They had faced their fears and emerged victorious. With Dawson now by her side, they had built not just a market but a stronghold of hope within their community. And as the day wove its magic, Sarah realized that transformation didn't just happen through dreams but through action, unity, and resilience. Watching faces light up, she understood they had cracked the facade of judgment. No longer were they defined by their pasts, they had forged a new identity together. As the sunsets painted the sky, radiance spilled over the community center, reflecting the vibrancy of every person gathered. Unlimited potential surged through the air like a second wind, but the journey had just begun. Together they would continue to rise, and they would face the trials ahead with the knowledge that unity thrived in spent effort and heartfelt connections. And with that thought, Sarah whispered into the breeze, "This is just the start. Now is the time for you to be a part of this journey." Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories that uplift and inspire. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these transformational tales alive. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this ending. It matters to us, and you need to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second. Only true fans understand how critical your support is for our community.